I'm Pete Gaffey from West Victoria, and I've got Harper Kilpatrick and John Kane here, and we've just gone out for a bit of a farm walk. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about setting up the season. So, Harper, we're heading into autumn and winter now. What feeding strategies have you put in place?
Up until we had a good break, we were primarily feeding silage and grain. We're primarily autumn calving, and we're nearly calved. We're at a stage now at the end of May where we've got about 5 kilos of grass going into the cows at the minute, plus silage, plus about 6.5 kilos of grain. We're on a 50 to 55 day round, so we're really trying to build covers. And the grass covers are increasing in front of cows, so as more grass goes into the diet, we'll pull the silage back and we'll adjust the grain. So for example, things like canola have been pulled back quite a bit now because there's plenty of protein in the diet with 5 kilos of grass, plus the silage is reasonably good quality. The other things that we're doing is we're following the cows at least once a week with about 100 kilos of urea or 45 kilos of nitrogen equivalent. We'd also be getting our P and K on this time of year because we prefer to put it on in the autumn and not to have to worry about a wet spring. And the other thing we'd be doing, we'd be following round with when we're spraying broadleaved herbicides, we're also putting Pro-Jib on. Right. And it's all about trying to build cover and get cover up as quickly as possible to try and be on grass and grain as quickly as possible, because grass is our cheapest feed. Yeah, cows do better on it, and it's easier for everybody as well.
And have you worked to try and get your calving pattern and your peak grass growth happening around the same time? Has that been part of your feeding strategy?
We've worked on that probably, John, over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, we used to start calving early February, but since we've been able to tighten the calving pattern up, we've pulled that back now. We don't start calving until early March, but we basically try and have it that the last cow's calved by the end of May, early June. Yeah. So that usually by middle of June we're in grass and grain, so we like to have everything calved, and when we start to join, there's plenty of grass going into the diet.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
The business has changed a little bit over the years in terms of there was quite a large number of spring calvers, whereas now it's sort of all been pulled back to about 85% of the herd's actually calving in the autumn, trying to match the calving pattern to the grass growth. It is predominantly quite hilly wheat farm in August, so just carrying on a little bit from what Harper's saying, it's quite important to build covers and so forth, because we have a bit of a challenge in the winter time if it gets particularly wet. Of trying to get the grass intake in there, because the utilisation can be a little bit lower. So we try to, you might only be able to graze down to residuals of 1800 rather than sort of 1600. Yeah. So it's important to have that slightly higher cover to balance that or buffer that. So that's this time of year when it's still dry underfoot. You can actually keep the rounds slow, keep the pressure on the grass, so that because going forward into August, it might be a bit difficult to achieve that.
So that's a good segue there, John. So heading into next season, what are a few of the key factors that people should be focusing on?
I think that the main thing is some of the lessons we learnt over the last couple of seasons is that you really got to get your numbers right. And that's the milking cow numbers, your replacement rate. Because one of the things we found out after doing our financial analysis, taking stock at the end of the financial year, was that we actually never had an average year. We either had a good year, where we did probably about 7.5 tonne of pasture consumption, or a dry year, we did 5.5. Our average at 6.5 never really occurred. So it's about trying to find out where your average is, so that in a good year, you pull a bit of fodder reserve, or a bit of fodder into reserve, and in a bad year, you pull that reserve out. The challenge a little bit is that some years you have 2 tough years in a row, and then your reserves get quite low. So one of the headwinds we've got coming up this year is essentially looking at the fact that the pantry's pretty empty further north. Purchasing fodder is very expensive. Grain's likely to come down, but really from a cash flow point of view, probably the consequences is going to be similar to last year, because last year we had a lower grain price early, then a higher grain price later. This year we're probably going to we've got a higher grain price early and hopefully a lower grain price later in the season. But milking those extra cows, if you go too far and you have to purchase that fodder in, it becomes pretty expensive. Those extra cows are really basically being milked on 100% purchase feed.
Yeah.
So you have to really think about getting that number right for your business, you know, and understanding where that number really does sit for your business, you know, because the consequences if you get it wrong are pretty high this year.
So Harper, given the announcements that have been made this week around milk price, what will you do differently on the back of the more positive outlook?
Yeah, it's certainly looking good from an opening milk price perspective. But look, from a cow numbers perspective, from a grain feeding level, we won't change things. I mean, we've probably learnt over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years that there's a sweet spot in terms of cow numbers to see us through the season, whereby we're not having to buy in forage from outside, and we like to be self-sufficient for forage. So therefore, if we have a good spring, we've no problems if we make extra silage, because there will be dry years coming up and that'll get consumed.
Yeah.
So therefore, just because it's a good milk price doesn't mean we'll milk 10% more cows. Obviously, with grain prices where they are, there's no real incentive to feed more grain. If anything, there's still an incentive to pull grain back and maximise grass.
Yep.
So really, probably we'll just keep things much the same.
Thanks very much, John and Harper, for your time today. Some really good advice there, and goodbye for now.